All right, we're going to get started. Welcome to the last panel session of the day. Thanks again for coming to being part of Outdoors Day at Midwest House here at South by. My name is Brad Garmon. I run the Outdoor Industry Office in the state of Michigan. These offices you'll see popping up around the Midwest. It was sort of an original idea out west in Colorado, Utah, and it is now across the country and taking root here in the Heartland. So Michigan has an office, Arkansas, who you'll hear from, has an office of Outdoor Rec, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and hopefully Texas, if Alex and his team get going. And Chris, doing good work. All right, I'm going to get started. Thanks again for coming. This is the Opportunity Outdoors. What this session is going to be is I've brought together thought leaders from different sectors who have lived experience adjacent to in part of what we see as the ecosystem of the Midwest. What does the Midwest have to offer, not only the outdoors, but really the world? So we're going to start with that session. I'm going to take a seat. I'll let folks introduce themselves, but I will start with me because this is part of what I'm trying to do. So the Outdoor Industry Office is bringing together different segments from research universities that you'll hear from to data, economically driven, what is the industry, and folks are bringing together production, support to bring together manufacturing and build on our assets in Michigan and across the Midwest. So with that as an intro, that is kind of what offices can do. Centralized at the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, pulling people together in the ecosystem to support some goals. So I'm going to sit down and turn it over to Jonas, who will introduce himself, and then we'll just go down the line, but talk a little bit about what you do, what your connection to this is, and the two guiding questions for all of this is, what got you here, what's the outdoor piece, or what's your Midwest piece? What do you see the Midwest opportunity as?
Yeah, so...
Just go ahead and start talk, they'll catch up.
Am I, yeah, there we go. All right, we're good now. I can't tell.
Oh.
All right, I'm just gonna do this. Away? You can hear me regardless?
Yep.
Ah, perfect. I wasn't sure there for a second. So I am Jonas Crews. I lead research in innovation and entrepreneurship at Heartland Forward, which is a think tank that focuses on figuring out basically what are the best economic development strategies for communities across the American Heartland. And we include in the American Heartland, the American South, and the Midwest. So why am I on this stage? I guess that's key here. I was one of those real oddities growing up. I was the kid that only wanted to be outside, but when you brought him inside was really good at math. And so I kind of found myself naturally in the world of economics, but always sort of interested in how the economics relates to the outdoor economy. So whenever COVID came along, our organization started to realize just how important the outdoors are to economic development, whether that's from a quality of life standpoint, a talent attraction standpoint, or diversifying your economy, especially for smaller rural communities. Yeah, that's pretty much why I'm here. We've really just gone down that path of let's understand what it means to go all in on outdoor recreation and how that affects the economy that you live in.
A little bit of stop at the Federal Reserve there. Do you want to add any of your expertise or anything into that?
I mean, I can do that. Yeah, so backgrounds in math and economics, and I worked at the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis for a long time. I guess not a long time, a few years. And yeah, did research on everything from monetary policy to the agribusiness economy.
And really good mountain biker. I've been down to Bentonville, came up earlier. Jonas took me out biking in Bentonville, and much like the earlier speaker, I learned, oh yeah, I'm not as young as I used to be. So, good stuff. Doctor, do you want to go next?
Thanks. First, I want to say today is International Women's Day. Yes, to the women! All right. How did I sit up here? Well, I am the executive director for Michigan's University Research Corridor, which is an alliance of Michigan's research-intensive universities. They include, for those who are from the Midwest or want to be in the Midwest but are not familiar with Michigan, it's Michigan State University, the University of Michigan, and Wayne State University. And my job essentially is to shamelessly promote these institutions and the unique contributions they make to Michigan's economy every day. So I'm very privileged to have the job I have. One of the things that's really exciting, we have looked at what are we doing in terms of preparing talent and doing research and commercializing innovation around key industries in Michigan, including mobility, life sciences, you name it, or whatever our key industries are. We have been doing less so sometimes in looking at what we're doing in emerging industries like this one, outdoor rec. And it's a really exciting time. As a data person, it's hard for me because I want to know, hey, Jonas, what are those NAICS codes? Can you define the industry for me? And then I can just run the numbers, right? Tell me what degree fields are needed for somebody who wants to go into this field. And we don't exactly know yet because we're still defining the industry, figuring out the there, right? And so it's really exciting. But I know there is something there. We see it. And, whether it's Bentonville or Michigan or some combination thereof, where this industry lands, that's a huge opportunity for states like Michigan and the region of Midwest, and really for the nation, because we are definitely becoming more engaged outdoor. We like our tech. My background, why I personally am engaged with this and hang around with Brad and hope he is wildly successful in his job in our state, is because I come from a family where we were outdoors all the time. My dad was a hang glider pilot, and he actually built his first hang glider. And so every weekend or near thereabouts, or it seemed like it as a kid anyhow, we would drive the van with the hang gliders on the top to whatever mountain was nearby. And I'm originally from Ohio. Any other Ohioans in the house? No?
They all left. They were
Just
here
Michigan?
earlier. They all ran away.
Okay. Well, yeah. I'm native, but now I'm in Michigan. But we could get, in the Cleveland area, we would all the time be in New York or Pennsylvania, and my dad would be on top of the mountain with all his buddies flying off. And my brother and I were left to roam. It's amazing we didn't fall off the mountain, but we didn't. We're here. And so that's my background, is being outdoors. And my personal, as an adult, because I'm not brave enough to fly a hang glider, I don't think I'm focused enough for that. So I've taken up, after being a collegiate track and field person, I've taken up Ironman and triathlons. And my other triathlon buddies are right here. And this is a major, major industry. In fact, the former dean of Michigan's Ross School of Business is now the CEO of Ironman. It's big business. And that's a big piece of this. It isn't just the innovation and technology piece, although believe me, all the gear we like to spend money on in triathlon, better, I'm all in. And if you tell me, Dave, that bikes are cheaper now, it might be time to replace Sunshine, the name of my tri-bike. So we'll see. But that's how I personally come to it. When I think about the opportunity to bring it around and let the next person talk, is we have both the innovation capacity from our universities and building knowledge. We have the ability to manufacture. We have the ability to attract talent to the space. I have my son over there. Sorry, Peter. He doesn't like to be pointed out, but he's with me in his first South by Southwest.
Yeah.
Computer science. And he's an outdoor kid. We raised him the same way I was raised, right? Outdoors. And the ability to either channel his talents into the industry in some fashion, or to be in a place where whatever his job is, he can live that life outdoor and be the end user. This is just only going to grow, I think. And at least that's my hope. And so, yeah, thanks.
Justin?
Sorry, I took all your time.
No, that's totally fine. Totally fine. It was more interesting. Justin Kosmides. I am very recent new resident of Detroit, moving from Brooklyn. Real simple, saw an incredible opportunity. The fact that 97% of the vehicles we use outdoors are imported. And only 3% of these vehicles are actually built in the United States. And a massive opportunity for us to take advantage of this shift in manufacturing back to the United States, but where it makes the most sense is in the Midwest when you look at all the ingredients. And so for the past year and a half, we've been pulling together 30, 40, soon to be close to 100 different brands that are actually going to start manufacturing, moving their manufacturing from China, Taiwan, Germany, Portugal, all back into the United States, and we're facilitating that in Michigan, but also in other states, but Michigan makes the most sense.
Outstanding. Yeah, so I want to spend a little bit of time digging into each of these things. And the two that I want to spend a little time, I guess, are we are in the Midwest House, and we're in the Outdoor Day. So those two things, I just want to take this panel. I know you've been in and out of some sessions earlier today. So we'll start with Jonas. We already heard nerdy stuff like NICS codes. So take a minute, talk about what is this outdoor economy. I know that's research you're doing with me across the country thinking about this. What is it we're talking about? That's a new number to me because the boating industry says all the boats are made here, and the RV industry says all the RVs are made in the US because you can't ship them overseas. So let's talk a little bit. What is the outdoor industry we're thinking of when we talk about it, so at least we're on the same page?
Yeah, so I think when you think about the outdoor industry, I think all of us up here want you to think beyond tourism. Tourism is great, but it is only one part of the outdoor industry, and I think that's especially the case in the Midwest. So really, the outdoor industry is anything that you purchase to help you get outside. At the end of the day, that is the outdoor industry. Well, that includes boat manufacturing, bike manufacturing, RV manufacturing. That includes services. That includes this Garmin watch on my wrist right now. I think we're all wearing wearables. There's so much more to the outdoor industry, especially in the outdoor tech space, than I think really of us ever think about.
Perfect. So think vehicles, think wearables, think the shoes. These are Holo footwear out of Grand Rapids, Latinx company, like startup, amazing stuff. That's what we talk about with the outdoors. I just want to that is a challenge to define. It is a moving target in some ways because it is evolving and those segments are breaking down and the definitions are changing. So for the purposes of this conversation, I think it is useful to think about it in the biggest way you can. From the sunglasses on my head to the shoes on my feet, the clothing we use, performance stuff, we went out fishing earlier, that is the outdoor economy. And that's what the federal government now measures and calls it. So we're going to go with that definition for now. But it's a moving target. Okay, start with that. Any comments from the other two about how you think about the industry, its evolution based on Jonas's definition?
From my perspective, we've been really good consumers. In my space, mobility, electric bikes, scooters, and also normal bikes and everything. We've been really good consumers over the past 10 years. We've not been capturing a lot of that economic opportunity here, which is missing out on a massive, massive market. And so for, as we were saying, it's more than just tourism, it's more than just the front end of it, it's more than just acquiring, it's also building these things and what goes into, the skilled labor, building out a lot more of the manufacturing and opportunities to be more involved. And that then crosses over into, you can have the engineering, the product development, a lot of that closer to where it's being built and then where it's being used. So it really creates an incredible ecosystem. But it takes volume, it takes size. It took us a year and a half to get enough e-bike, e-scooters, electric snowmobile companies, electric motorcycle companies to the volume size that could make sense to start making some of that capital investment. So it doesn't happen overnight. It needs support from states, needs the proper ingredients, the warehouses, the people, and that's why we relocated and decided on Michigan to build it out, because it had all of that ingredients and everything there.
So even today we were talking and texting, and I sent a link to something happening in Southeast Michigan, a company, and a literal response was, WTF is that? Because we don't know sometimes what this vehicle is. A four-wheeled, looks like an off-road vehicle, but it rides like a Segway. We don't know. So it's an outdoor vehicle. It's a light electric vehicle. It's something that people are using to go outside and recreate inlands and on trails and things that they would not have moving target. But super exciting and all the way to like the session if you were in earlier about textiles. Recycled content in clothing becomes a advanced materials question. It becomes a technology question. It becomes a composites question. Can you put recycled plastic in it, and what's the value of that? So with that in mind, thinking, may I call you Britt? Is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Think a little bit of the advanced research that goes into that and how your universities think about the outdoor economy, if they do it all, or how we can get them to think about the outdoor economy.
Yeah, I mean, here's a thought, a couple of thoughts for people to solidify this, I think, or at least it does for me in my brain. I'll let you enter my brain and think about this. One thing, how many of you were tennis players at some point before fiberglass rackets? You had a wooden racket. Yeah. And how much of a better tennis player did you become when you got your first graphite racket, right? You can at least hit it harder, and then you had a bigger surface area, right? So it can revolutionize. We're a family of runners, and we're looking at the times of our sons who run collegiately and they're athletes, and they have completely different shoes now. They literally run faster. It's insane and awesome. And so, those are some things that really can revolutionize a sport. But if you think about the industry part of it, one of the things that we have been in conversation about for a long time, given that we are the motor state in Michigan, and mobility is huge, right? And it's electrifying. Might be changing a little bit, not as fast as we initially thought, but it is changing. And so when you think about that huge industry and everything we drive and all the infrastructure around electrification, think about now the entire outdoor recreational vehicle industry being electrified. We talk a lot about e-bikes. That's huge. But think about the other side of my family. They were very into snowmobiles and everything motorized. All of that's going to be electrified, and how do we do that? How do we make them safer like we are in traditional cars, right? And so I think that's a huge opportunity. And at the universities, we are doing all kinds of innovation in mobility that has carryover to this industry of outdoor rec. And, we have, with the advanced materials, the two panels before, talking about the circular economy, we tend to have an idea about outdoor rec being clean and exciting and, very green, right? And yet, those who ski, what do you wax your skis with? Something that has probably PFAS in it. When we go outside, I hike, and I love Gore-Tex in my shoes, in my jacket, but we know that the production of those materials has a very negative effect. And so the other research that I would argue is related in this industry is the wraparound piece. How do we study the impacts of PFAS in our water? How do we get rid of it? The so-called forever chemicals. And so it's all of that. And when you start thinking about it in that way, the innovation front is huge. That's an opportunity. So.
Yeah, I just want to jump in. So I brought a prop. So this is an outbound light. So very bright. Can we see it up there? Sorry, I did not mean to shine that in your eyes. So this is really cool, and this is something that gets me really excited about the Midwest. When I lived in St. Louis, there was a guy I knew who got into mountain biking. And what was his background? He's an automotive lighting engineer. So in the Midwest, it's really popular. The sun goes down really early, really all over the U.S. Anywhere that you can ride in the winter, the sun goes down early, so you need a light to ride. Well, this guy started buying lights. And what he discovered was that lights on the market are terrible. It was a race for lumens, but no one understood really what lumens were, anything about beam pattern. So he quit his job as a very successful automotive lighting engineer and started this business in his basement in St. Louis. And he's manipulating things like beam pattern. He has a road version of this. Because he has a background in the automotive industry, he understands that the beam pattern for the road needs to be such that the light does not shine in the driver's eye for the driver coming in the opposite direction, or that is a hazard for the cyclist. He is thinking about these things, and he's taking innovations that have really already been made and were already made specifically in the Midwest. in Michigan, in Detroit, and figuring out how to apply those innovations into this industry in a new way and create new innovations. And I think that's pretty cool and so exciting for the Midwest, right?
That was a perfect segue, because that's where I was going next. I love it, and a prop. I brought my own prop, so you're going to see a lot of these around over South by Southwest. So, yeah, taking pride in what we bring from the Midwest to this conversation and ones like it. And I want to hear each of them talk a little bit about this, but I want to tell you what I think, which is I was not always from the Midwest. I grew up playing in the Rockies, skiing and everything like that. So, my concept is you go out there to use a lot of this stuff, or the coast, or New England, but the innovations, the technology, the engineering, the production, it's here. This is the place. And so what these shirts are talking about is very Michigan specific. This one is, I'm going to borrow from my friend Dave Ola here on the front row, like Michigan and the Midwest, we don't just invent products, we invent new industries. We invent new segments of industries. So lighting changed bicycling. We invented snowboards. We invented techno. We invented things that changed the way people do stuff, and whole product lines evolve out of those. That is what I think we have a history of, a legacy going back hundreds of years in the Midwest of being the place to create new segments, new industries, new ways to experience. So thinking about that, what are the advantages of being in the Midwest if you're in the outdoors industry, if you want to be part of it, you want to work in it, you want to be a talent person? Why here instead of Utah or California or New England? Why would you pick Midwest?
This is a good question for you.
Justin's ready, primed?
Sure. Yeah. No. It is. Well, I think this is also speaks something what's happening bigger picture in the United States and more manufacturing and more advanced technologies and advancements in manufacturing coming back to the United States throughout a variety of industries. A lot of investors are finally getting behind that too, but I think in particular, the Midwest has, and we can really owe it to what the auto industry laid down as a lot of the infrastructure that we can build off of and do so much more efficiently and create sustainability, not just capital S, but lowercase s, of more sustainable business models that you can't do. I know motorcycle companies in California and in other parts of the country that need to shift back to the Midwest because it's much more efficient to operate and scale. And so we're at this incredible crossroads that we're starting to build more here. We know we need to have more access to more of this manufacturing closer to home. And the Midwest is kind of primed to build off of its legacy, its infrastructure of people, highest quality labor, at the lowest prices in the country, and easiest to scale up, and the best real estate and warehousing in the country, and it's there and it's available. And I'm not from the Midwest either. Born and raised Baltimore, New York for 15 years. But when you look at and take an objective analysis, there's no better place in the country to put the pieces together of a lot of what is being developed and engineered.
Love it.
I think maybe I'm going to flip the question on you a little bit and be more, talk about why Michigan from a talent perspective, and what this industry, the opportunity it opens up. You may or may not have heard, we have a bit of a population problem in Michigan. Our governor commissioned a council to examine how we can bring in more people to the state of Michigan. By the way, you guys all have an open invitation anytime. Come on up to
come back
to
on
the
Sunday
menu.
for more on Michigan's population
exactly.
growth plan.
They'll probably talk more about it there. But one of the things, as a kid, how many of you took one of those? What would you most be likely to do as a grown-up, given your interests when you were like 12? Like you're going to be I don't know, an engineer or a doctor or whatever. And for those of you like me who may have checked, I like to be outdoors. How many of you guys checked that one, right? We all did, right? And what was the answer back for you? Park ranger.
Yeah.
Do you see me as a park ranger? No, thank you. But that was it. If you like the outdoors, that's it. And so with this industry, I think, grounding it in where it's growing in places like Arkansas and Michigan is that provides a unique opportunity for talent attraction. And this is where I will share my pet peeve about talent. People will say, oh, retain talent. I hate that word, retain, because you have to attract your own as much as you attract people who are unfamiliar with your state. And so it's all about attraction. And this is an industry, I think, that can bring in the unique capabilities and creativity and passions of the kind of talent we want to bring to Michigan and for you to Arkansas. But we'll beat you. It's okay. Well, you do have a really nice light, though.
Yeah, it's nice.
All right.
Yeah, he's in Chicago now, so he's a little bit closer to Michigan.
That is Midwest, yeah.
So, yeah, I think there are really two things that I want to latch onto here. One is the Heartland more broadly. We have a history of being makers, and that's how these things get created. So I, in order to save my nonprofit money, stayed 12 miles from here, and I used an e-bike that is sitting right over there to get back and forth to my hotel. That e-bike is really cool. So my organization runs a very early stage entrepreneurship program, and one of the businesses that was started through that entrepreneurship program built that bike over there. And that bike takes frames, road bike frames and mountain bike frames that are heading to landfills. They take them in, and they chop them up, they put them on a jig, and they turn them into commuter bikes, which is a really cool intersection with both, and they're e-bikes, so a really cool intersection with the electrification and the sustainability component. But those are the types of stories that are just so, to me, so Midwestern and so Heartland. Just this idea that you could just take a bunch of frames that were heading to the landfill, you're gonna chop them up, you're gonna buy a jig, you're gonna throw it on a jig, you're gonna create an e-bike out of it that I think I have 70% battery life left, and I went 17 miles this morning because I ran a few errands on the way here. That is such a Heartland and Midwestern story to me, and it's so cool that you just do this in your garage. They're still making these things in their garage, and I think they've made 100 and shipped them all around the country at this point. The other thing that gets me really excited, just like this light, this was a Midwestern issue, correct? And we came up with a Midwestern solution for a Midwestern issue. I think this is really common. When we think about things, especially like mountain biking and skiing, these products in these sports generally came from the mountains. Doing that activity looks different in the Midwest, and that is important because it means we need different products. So there is a mountain bike company based in Northwest Arkansas that created a new mountain bike. The company's name is Allied. They created a bike called the BC40. One of the cool things with that company is it's one of the only carbon mountain bikes manufactured in North America. There were 3 companies, now I think we're down to 2. Unfortunately, one went out of business in Colorado, but we're down to 2 companies. So this thing is made in Colorado. It's called the BC40. The reason it's called the BC40 is because one of our most popular trail systems is the Back 40. And this bike was designed for the Back 40 trail system because bikes designed and built in the Pacific Northwest don't make sense for Midwestern trails. And that's a really exciting opportunity as things like mountain biking get more popular. And where are these bikes getting sold? They're getting sold in the American South and the American Midwest because, again, the current selection of bikes in the market don't make that much sense for the Midwest.
Brad, it reminds me, I sent you a funny meme earlier today, and this is just something bigger picture from my backgrounds in banking and private equity. But you know, the investment community now is getting to the point where you pretty much look at AI, you look at SaaS, you look at all these other things, and the opportunity is becoming fewer and fewer and slimmer. There really doesn't exist that much. If you look at a lot of the research and Y Combinator put out an incredible thing a couple weeks ago, really pushing for more manufacturing, more aerospace, more hardware, and you look down that list, there's a lot of backing of making things again. And where was most of the stuff? You go back 100 years ago, 60 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, where was most of the stuff manufactured? In the United States, before it was exported, it was mostly in the Midwest.
Can I ask a question? So do you think that's something that really accelerated that return to making things because of our experience through COVID and the supply chain disruptions?
Yep. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. No doubt about it. It accelerated. I think the trend was already starting to shift, but I think it was accelerated significantly because of supply chains felt. But I also feel like there's a growing shift back in. I mean, we see this in everything from semiconductors all the way up to larger things. It's becoming more expensive to manufacture overseas. So as that becomes more expensive and a lot of side effects to it, becomes closer in line with manufacturing down the road from us.
So I already warned you guys that my job is to shamelessly promote the URC institutions. Let me share that all three of our institutions have top-ranked supply chain departments. And so that's a capacity that can certainly be deployed in this industry right in Michigan.
And like it or not, like the auto industry, obviously, a lot's changing, but there's a lot that you can grow and learn from the efficiencies and the systems and the industries that they've built out that can be applied to everything that we're talking about in the outdoor space and, quite frankly, throughout a lot that we're manufacturing in the U.S.
I'm going to jump and rip off that a little bit because it reminds me of something. And my question was really about ecosystem building, which I know, Justin, you've been doing a lot of. But there's a case study, and I want you to kind of give me yours. But one of the things that I experienced was a company trying to manufacture in Michigan, was interested in it, but needed not just like traditional economic development incentives, like, oh, we're going to create X number of jobs, so please give us X number of dollars. It was, what we really need is adjacency to your research institutions because we need some advanced materials consulting, and we also really need some talent, so can you help me find people that can work with those advanced materials and do some hardware, software integration stuff, and can you connect that for us? And I think most of our economic development institutions are just learning, oh, that's not just about the cash anymore. It's about the ecosystem we build around it that companies need. Can you tell a little bit, maybe, Justin, about your experience, what you're building and how you're pulling that together? And then I'd love for the two of you to talk also from universities and then from Arkansas, kind of Heartland stuff.
Yeah, I mean, part of what Brad's talking about, and Brad has this, he says it almost every single time I talk to him, Southeast Michigan can be the e-bike manufacturing capital of the country, or light electric vehicle. I remind them that so pretty wide electric snowmobiles, scooters, motorcycles. It can grow much wider than that. But I look at Silicon Valley, I look at the ecosystem around Boston, I look at the ecosystem in New York, fintech, AI, healthcare, a lot of these other things, and I look at the ecosystem that Michigan and, quite frankly, going to Cleveland and the guys at Land and other areas, it's throughout the Midwest, but that ecosystem is the most important aspect because you're lowering the costs that you can produce and you can engineer and you can develop, and thus the back-end cost for these companies becomes more sustainable. And so they don't need these massive influxes of cash and then burn through a lot. That can really create a more sustainable model from the beginning because they can all leverage off of a lot of the shared platform and similarities and research and development and engineering all there. And so what we've done, what Bloom did for the past 2 years and continues to do, is what are those shared resources in the mobility world? We're going to get to RV, we're going to get to charging stations later. Now it's mobility, it's the most important right now. But where are all those resources that we can share and pull together that 50, 100, 200 companies can all share in the back end, kind of like a co-op? We're a for-profit co-op, but it really is creating that ecosystem that you can build more sustainably and scale more sustainably, which is, quite frankly, the most important thing for it. As much as I love when the state puts a crazy amount of money into a battery factory, I truly believe that 1 million small investments in companies and relocating their division, they don't need that. Like, that's not going to really be the big change. The big change is getting 40 mobility companies to relocate from around the world into Detroit, and that takes a fraction of the cost. And it's a firm belief that there's a better way of the state, and I love Whitmore, I love Justine, I love the whole team, I love MEDC, I'll sing their praise all day, but there's a more efficient way for states to look at building these ecosystems. the private sector to leverage off of and scale, because that's quite frankly the more important aspect of the equation.
So I feel like I'm having this conversation all over again. I was having this conversation yesterday. The real reason I'm here is not so much for South by, but to have a meeting with a guy named Larry Peterson here in Austin, who heads up something called the Texas Foundation for Innovative Communities. And they do a lot of looking at data, economic data. And I'm like, okay, talk to me about how is it that you are identifying what those key clusters are, and how do you build them up, and how do you target limited taxpayer dollars to have the greatest impact, right? And he's saying, for those of you who are familiar, he's worked closely with Michael Porter out of Harvard and his whole cluster modeling, right? And so once you identify the clusters you have, and this would be, I think, an emerging cluster, tangential to our probably most concentrated cluster in Michigan being mobility. Once you look at that, you've got to also then look at the assets you have at your universities and in your entrepreneurial ecosystem. Do you have the right funding? Do you have all this? Because at the end of the day, if you only have so many dollars to invest, the best bang for your buck isn't necessarily funding individual entrepreneurs. What did he say? He said that's like the state buying lottery tickets and hoping they win a scratch off or something. What we have to do is just what you were saying, and that is build up a larger ecosystem and really channel our limited resources into helping at scale these companies scale up, and particularly tradable tech companies scale up, because that's where you're going to get your biggest bang for your limited dollars and the biggest impact economically speaking, where the goal is, more than anything, it's not jobs. I did say that. It's not jobs. Jobs will come. The biggest goal is about prosperity. And how we define that is in a couple of ways. How are we building up industries like this one with great growth potential that will raise the per capita GDP in our state? That's prosperity. And to make sure it's evenly being shared, you got to check what the spread is, the per capita mean wages, right? And so, did I get that right, Lisa? She's the data guru here in our crowd.
We got lots of those, apparently.
She's awesome. And so that is essentially what we need to be angling for. So when you can think about what you just said, that's what in the policy realm we're talking about, and we're trying to get the data, which of course I'm going to be following up with you. Brace yourself. And you're going to share with me some of the data that you're getting. So, I mean, that's, I think, the name of the game.
Yeah, I'll just start by saying I think of ecosystems a little bit differently, especially in the outdoor recreation space. And I like to think that when it comes to ecosystems, we really need to start with an ecosystem of recreators. And I think this is where tourism comes in, and this is where sort of permanent tourism comes in, like having your locals participate in recreation activity, having people move to your community like we've seen in Northwest Arkansas we actually put a billboard up in Austin talking about how much better our traffic is in Bentonville, so people would move here, or move to Bentonville away from here. But anyways, we have this ecosystem of recreators. And what happens when you have a whole bunch of ecosystems recreators? And this gets into cluster theory, so the whole Michael Porter conversation. You start having these collisions. You start having people come up with different ideas for products because they're out there every day, just like this light. This is someone who was participating in an activity, and only because he was participating in that activity did he have an idea. And that's really what we're starting to see in Northwest Arkansas. We're having really cool companies pop up because we have so many people participating in an outdoor recreation activity, and because they're surrounded by people who, when they create that product, they want to test. So not only do you have your people who can come up with the ideas, you have your beta testers. And then when we're talking about reshoring manufacturing, one key component of that is we are every day a smaller percentage pretty much across the country of our kids are going into the trades, which is a complicated problem. One thing that I believe that is a hypothesis of mine as it relates to outdoor recreation is if you have a community really passionate about an outdoor recreation activity, they might be a little bit more likely to go make that product. They may not want to make some random I have an economics background, so I'm going to use the term widget. We love to talk about widgets in economics, but they might not want to go make some random widget that they have no emotional connection to. But they might want to make this light. They might want to make the mountain bike that's being made in Northwest Arkansas, and that gets me excited, because then we have this ecosystem of recreators that's turning into this ecosystem, this broader entrepreneurship ecosystem, and then we start to see these clusters develop. You know, one of the things that has shocked me so much about Northwest Arkansas is we've had a cluster develop that I never would have thought of, and that cluster is trail building. We have basically more trail building companies per capita than anywhere else in the country. Northwest Arkansas companies are building everyone else's trails. Why did that happen? We saw a massive investment in trail building, which brought in some initial companies, actually one of which came from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in rock solid trail contracting. And what happened then? Well, they started building trails, and then they had people move there to work for them as trail builders, who then took a step back and thought to themselves, I can build a trail a little bit different and maybe a little bit better. And they started their own company. And now we have all of these different trail building companies that are going through, when you talk about cluster theory, they're going through what you would call co-opetition. So they're all interacting with each other. They're sharing ideas with each other. We're having these collisions that are creating these innovations. They're also competing with each other. Every day they wake up and basically ask themselves, how am I going to build a trail better than company B? And that when we get into clusters, that's really how you create the innovations that really get exported out into the rest of the world and create a lot of economic good, increased quality of life, increased prosperity.
I'll share one quick story, and then I do want to get some questions too, but that's another good one that reminds me when I was down in Bentonville riding with Jonas. There was a small company that trail conglomeration, all trail building, also launches new startups doing trail camera, really cool stuff. So I nearly got captured having a really huge crash, and that would have been fine, but I'm glad I didn't. But the cool thing was they were out of Michigan originally, University of Michigan grads, electrical engineer kind of stuff. Jason Theodos moved down there because of that cluster of activity around mountain bike trails. It spins off so many other ancillary things. So I'm going to go on a crazy limb.
It's interesting because it's that cluster, and you were talking about investing, is because two guys got really into mountain biking over COVID. Now, those two guys happen to be in one of the richest families in this country, and the requirement to get funding to go into that was you need to relocate down to Bentonville, which is genius. And in doing so, they caused ripple effect that still was felt and continues to be felt, which is a great benefit. And again, if states and other funding sources thought, and that's how like venture and family offices and others think about it, because they know and feel that ripple effect. And it's incredible what Arkansas, they're vying for, besides Michigan and some of the pieces, what that is. But it's an incredible way of like, we'll give you a little bit of money, and a lot of the funding sources that go through Bentonville, that's the requirement. You need to relocate. It's genius.
I want to, and I know we want to get to questions, Brad, but I want to get to one small piece too. Not everywhere in the nation is going to have a cluster in this emerging industry, and nor should they. And when we think about quality of life, and we want everywhere to have trails and the things that they want to buy these products to enjoy, right? Being the center of the outdoor rec industry is not necessarily because you have the most trails or the best trails, although I can see Dave over there, he would argue we have them in the UP. But, sorry. Anyway, but the point is, we need everyone to have this, because the industry, like we think about mobility, we don't make all those cars in Detroit for Detroiters. We make them for the world. And so with this industry, we want this cluster to be in a couple of places we can maybe share and export it out everywhere else so people can be enjoying it. And I think that's sometimes the distinct difference between when we're talking about a tourism industry, the end user, and when we're talking about this industry.
Yeah, really good point. And I'm going to do questions. I'm going to go out on a limb, though, because would you mind introducing Revelin Sports? Because racket sports came up earlier. So there's a mic over there. Another Michigan company, if I'm not mistaken. And there can be hubs, I would say, because the outdoor industry has got everything. So maybe we can create a racket sports hub in Michigan?
Yeah, so I'm Hugh Davis. I'm the founder and CEO of Revelin Sports. We currently are a pickleball company, and it's interesting you're talking about clusters. There's actually 9 other pickleball companies located in Michigan. I don't think there's another state with the saturation of pickleball companies. Revelin in particular makes high-performance, sustainable pickleball paddles from hemp, from bamboo, from volcanic rock, things like that. So we're unique in that sense, but yeah, it's an interesting hub and cluster, and West Michigan has 4 of those, us being one of them. We build them right in Michigan. All the other pickleball companies are importing from China mostly, but these Michigan companies all mostly build them in Michigan. So lots of opportunity there. Expansion of our materials into other sports, other racket sports, board sports, paddle sports. So yeah, it's an interesting world, and I really enjoy this topic, and thank you all for the discussion and the comments.
Thanks for doing that.
Pickleball one of the fastest growing sports now?
Yeah, in the U.S. and now in the world, we're seeing adoption in China and in Europe and India, Australia. So
yeah. Thanks.
One of the great things about my job is that I get to recognize brands like that as being Michigan, and hey, that's part of the ecosystem. We need to wrap our arms around that too. So thank you for saying that. Other questions? I got more questions for him, but we got a couple more minutes here. Do you have anything you want to ask? Please, got a mic right behind you.
Hi, I'm Roop Chowdhury from Axios. I was surprised to hear about the population issue at Michigan, and I know there's probably another panel later this week, but I'd love for you guys to just enlighten us a little bit on that.
Yeah, did you hear the question?
Yeah, okay. Your question was on population growth, that you're surprised. Look, Michigan, and frankly, most states that are not Texas, California, North Carolina, we are losing population. And so we're not unique in that way, but it has become a really big concern for us because we know we can't grow in the way that we want to grow. We can't grow prosperity for everyone without having enough people to do the jobs, and particularly really skilled and educated folks, right? And so population became a very big issue in this last year. There was a report that came out with the Michigan Citizens Research Council, and that really catalyzed a policy interest from the governor on down and across our industry leaders and so forth to come up with a set of policy recommendations. No money was allocated for achieving any of the recommendations. That's yet to be determined in this budget cycle, I suppose. Definitely not my job. But some of the things in that, I think, are good guidelines. My argument would be not that we shouldn't be concerned about population. I already introduced my kid over there, right? And I'm desperately hoping that he finds a job in his field in Michigan, but and he wants to, right? Right, Peter? Yeah. Not that you're on the spot, babe, but you know. But this is what we hope, and we have to provide the opportunities and the awareness. And so it's a chicken and egg, right? I guess maybe it's like walking up on 2 ladders. 1 foot on one ladder, 1 foot on the other, and you just kind of have to go up like this, right? And that's the delicate dance we need to do, along with many other Midwestern states and New England in particular.
It shocks me. I just moved from Brooklyn, and that report still shocks me because, and again, I'm not pandering to the Midwest crowd or house, but why there's not more of a shift back into some of these cities. The opportunity, the cost of living, what you can do, who you can get in front of, the change that you can have. Now, granted, you're in some industries, it makes a lot more sense to be in other cities, but for a lot, I'm blown away that there's not more people. I'm doing my own part of convincing everyone, but... Well,
we have the other thing about climate change, too, right? And I see my colleague over there at U of M. Go Blue, right? Mike Saratakis, folks. And We have one of the deans of our School of Environment and Sustainability, or SEAS for short, is this world-renowned researcher, and he chose purposely to move to Michigan, to go to be the dean of SEAS at Michigan. And that's because he knows in the future, near future probably, we are sitting on 20% of the world's surface fresh water. We have a sustainable climate. This is the place to be. And I would argue it's not just Michigan, it's much of the Midwest and Northeast, right? So that's a big deal on the sustainability front. And I think people care about that.
Yeah, and I'll just add, this isn't just a Michigan problem. I mean, we at Heartland Forward, we focus on the whole Midwest and the whole South. Now, the South is actually gaining population right now. The Midwest, pretty much across the board, is losing population. But I think one thing that you do have to realize is that humans are fickle beasts. And it really wasn't that long ago that people were flocking to the Midwest for good jobs and really good opportunities. And I think we see this ebb and flow in population dynamics across the country. And unfortunately, population dynamics is one of those things that's relatively close to a zero-sum game, and you're always kind of competing for talent. But I think what we've learned, if you look at it from a demographics perspective, is that people for a very long time valued above anything else their job. And I think the Midwest does good jobs as well as anyone. Things have shifted a little bit. People are looking now for the intersection between really good quality of life outside of work and a really good job opportunity. And I will say that a lot of the states in the Midwest, frankly, if I'm being honest, we're a little bit behind that. But I think the fact that we are having this conversation and the fact that we are having an outdoor day as it relates to the Midwest signals that Midwestern states get it and that they're heading in the right direction. The fact that you have the job that you do in Michigan signals that Michigan gets it, right? And so, I mean, I think it's my hope and my expectation that we're going to see the tide start moving the other way.
So, we have time for maybe a couple more, but I have to point, themichiganlife.org is part of that, and I get to announce this, so thank you for the question. We just added, the population growth, like talent attraction sort of website. Outdoor recreation's always been on there as the amenity because we have great outdoor recreation things to do in Michigan. As of today, we just went live with the outdoor recreation as an industry that can hire you, that you can put to work today as an engineer, a designer. That's a list of companies and jobs in Michigan. So now we have both sides of that equation that Jonas is referencing to try to put that in there. You don't have to be in Salt Lake City. You can be in Michigan, you can be in Arkansas and live a life and have an economy and a job based on the outdoor recreation. So I know I saw one in the back and one up here. So right back there, I think. And then we'll come to the front row and we'll be done.
Hi, you mentioned that you were hoping that there'd be a few other industries outside of your region. How do you envision working together with other industries that are in your region and sharing resources with people that may be outside of your state?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get all that.
Oh, okay. So you mentioned that you were hoping that there'd be other industry clusters similar to your own, not a lot, but a few. Do you think that you would work together with other states or other regions in sharing resources to build ecosystems and build that industry sector?
Yeah. So the answer to that, I think the answer is yes. I'm going to tell you real quick my background. Before I did all this, I was at the Brookings Institution, and I worked on a project to revitalize the Great Lakes region, and I saw this is back in the mid-2000s, right? I saw incredible collaboration, particularly in the business community across all these Great Lakes states and 2 Canadian provinces. So I think I'm optimistic about that. How you do that, though, is tough. We might understand. I had a president at University of Michigan who used to say, you know, it used to be publish or perish, now it's partner or perish. And I think that's true not just in universities, but everything. And for places that figure that out, how to collaborate and do it well, they build the trust. I mean, you know, progress is only made at the speed of trust. You build it through successful engagements with people, and then once you're building that, you have a competitive advantage because you're collaborating. And I do think state borders don't matter. We're the Great Lakes state, and our borders are water, which I don't know, we can appreciate our friends in Ohio and Wisconsin and Indiana and so forth who share the same water bodies, right? And of course, Windsor to the south of Detroit, right? So yes.
And I see the St. Louis shirt. So are you a St. Louis outdoor recreator?
We're an economic development organization for the greater St. Louis region. But, I think when it comes to ecosystem building, it's really important to build that within your own region. But I think that there's so much power when you're collaborating with other people. But like you said, trust is so important.
You said it. That's great.
Yeah. So I just want to say, I am very proud to say that outside of my work life, I built the first mountain bike jump in the St. Louis area. I'm very proud of that. Yeah, we got permission from St. Louis County to build it. So yeah, I did the trail system is Zombie Trail System, which is out in the county. Oh, perfect. Yeah, so there's one jump on one of the trails that I built, I guess it was 7 years ago. That's awesome. So I will also add, one of the things that we've seen in Northwest Arkansas and in Michigan is, and just like with this light that came from St. Louis is, when you have these recreators, a lot of times the natural opportunities that pop up are at the intersection with the things that you already do well as a community. And that's what I really hope to see across the Midwest. You in Michigan are really good at advanced manufacturing. St. Louis is really good at biotech. You got the Donald Danforth Plant Science Center, and that in so many ways and more every day is intersecting with outdoor recreation. And maybe that's the way we look at it, is that each part of the Midwest can have a part of the supply chain that leads to outdoor recreation products and outdoor recreation innovations based on what they're already really good at.
Yeah.
Well said.
Well said. I think we're getting the hook. Thank you all to the panelists. Thank you for sticking around. Happy South by.
Thanks
we'll be
to
around.
Brad.
Thanks,
Way
Brad.
to go today. Woo woo.
Moderator extraordinaire today.